The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
The Paranormal View. The Paranormal View. The Paranormal View. Time now for the Paranormal View. The Paranormal View on the Para X Radio Network with your host, Henry Foister, 𝘍𝘬𝘮, and Jeffrey Gould. The Paranormal View.
Welcome everybody to the Paranormal View right here on the Para-X Radio Network. Want to welcome everybody for being here tonight. Looks like we have a full chat room, and for the many listening from around the world. We appreciate each and every one. And if you're not here with us and you're listening from somewhere else, you can come over to para-x.com, click on the show chat button on the right side of the page, and then click on the player button at the top of the page, and you'll be able to hear the show and interact with us and the guests by either private chatting Jeffrey or Craig or myself with questions for our guests. So please do that. Tonight I do have Craig Rupp with us.
Welcome, everybody.
And Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
And before we actually introduce our guest tonight, I want to remind everybody that it's only a couple weeks away. The Paranormal View will be doing our live show on Christmas Eve. So if for some reason you aren't out with friends, family, or you're just sitting around the house at night having a drink or two waiting on Santa, feel free to drop by and join us. We're going to have a great show, just kind of laid back by the fireplace and having fun. We've got,
and you know, they can always make their family and friends listen as well.
Well, yeah, they can do that too. And with that, there's a few things that we will be doing. If you go to theparanormalview.com, you will see a big Santa Claus. You can click on that Santa Claus, and you can send your letters to Santa, whatever you would like. Or you can also just send us a message and tell us what you think or feel is the magic of Christmas, because that's what our show will be themed about, will be the magic of Christmas. And we'll be doing lots of things. We plan on also having a naughty and nice list, and we'll be talking about different things of Christmas, some facts and different things that you may not know, and might even have a surprise guest or two around. So drop on by and we will have a great time. So put that down on your calendar. Christmas Eve, we will be right here. And also, I'm pretty sure we will probably be doing a New Year's Eve party. So you might want to join that one. I got a feeling somebody might be having fun there. So we got a great guest tonight. I'm sure you guys will be sending a lot of questions in for this. And I'm going to let Jeff go ahead and introduce our guest.
Well, our guest tonight is Preston Dennet, who began investigating in 1986 the paranormal and UFOs when he discovered that his friends, family, and coworkers were all having very dramatic, unexplained encounters. He's interviewed since then hundreds of witnesses and investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomena. He's a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, and a ghost hunter, paranormal researcher, and the author of 13 books. So actually, I think it's a little more than that, actually. And more than 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. His articles have appeared in numerous magazines, including Fate, Atlantis Rising, MUFON, UFO Journal, which just sounds redundant, Nexus, Paranormal Magazine, UFO Magazine, Mysteries Magazine, Ufologist, and others, which is pretty. That's where our other listeners come from, Henry. The other magazine is where we have our other people live. His research has been presented in the Los Angeles Times and Daily News, Dallas Morning News and other newspapers, and he's taught classes in various paranormal subjects and lectures across the country. Currently, he lives in Canoga Park, California, not far from where I used to live in Sherman Oaks. He's appeared on numerous radio and television programs, including but not limited to The Paranormal View. So welcome, Preston.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Great to be here.
We're glad to have you. And anytime we have someone on about UFOs, it's always a great show. But UFOs isn't the only thing that you have. Are you an investigator also with ghosts?
I am. I kind of resisted the subject for a while, but after a while, you can't ignore the evidence. And so I didn't want to, but yeah, I've done a couple of books on ghosts now. I've done a number of haunting investigations and so on.
Well, I'm sure we'll get to some of those in a little bit also. But tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you got started into the paranormal and into looking for UFOs.
All right. Well, let me see. I grew up pretty much here in California. Moved here from Chicago when I was about 7 years old. I'm the fifth of 6 kids in my family. And our family was always pretty skeptical of this kind of stuff, UFOs and the paranormal. And certainly I was. And it wasn't until I was like 19 years old, I believe, when I heard a story on the news about a UFO sighting over Alaska. And I didn't believe it for a second. I thought, well, this guy's lying. He's hallucinating. He's, misperceiving reflections off the ice cap there. This was actually a really famous case. It turned out that these objects were pacing this Japanese airliner for, 50 miles or so at least. And they appeared on the onboard radar and also on ground radar. And none of this was in the news stories. It was all tongue-in-cheek. They kind of made fun of the story, and so did I. And that's when it all kind of changed for me, because I found out, I started talking about this news story, this crazy guy who thought he saw a UFO. And I mentioned it at work. I work as a bookkeeper. Back then it was data entry, but since then. But at any rate, I found out that a number of my coworkers, people I've known a while, had seen UFOs. One lady told me she had been followed home from the library by a UFO. Another said she and her whole family watched this object darting back and forth. And turned out my brother had seen a UFO. 2 of my sister-in-laws both had seen UFOs. I had a friend who had missing time. So it kind of hit home for me. And I started picking up books on it, expecting to find an explanation. And there was none. So one thing led to another. I started investigating cases locally and picking up all the books. I joined all the groups. And, it led me to... It kind of took over my life, to be perfectly honest. I became obsessed with it. I'm not even exactly sure why.
Well, I know that I haven't never seen a UFO per se. I've seen something way up in the sky at night, looked like a star real far away, but then when you see 3 of them that come together and then all shoot off in another direction, you don't know what it is. I couldn't say that it was UFOs because it was so far away, but at the same time, I don't know of any airplanes or anything else that would be that high that could fly like that or move like that. So.
Right. Well, it sounds like a UFO. I never saw anything growing up, and it wasn't. This I kind of found really fascinating. Is it wasn't long after I started investigating this stuff seriously that I started having sightings, and often it was with other people. I remember the first time I had actually gone to a UFO group to hear a contactee speak. There must have been 50 or 100 people there in the audience, and this contactee said that after the meeting we could all go out into the park. And this was in Santa Monica, downtown Santa Monica, and he would call down a UFO. I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. I'm skeptical, but I'll give it a try. And I was surprised that only, a small handful of people wanted to do it. I thought everyone would, see a UFO. Why not, right? But so there was just a small handful of us, and this guy, he had us kind of stand in a circle and meditate a little bit, which I found, embarrassing actually. And Then he pointed to a section of the sky, and he said, "Look right there." And I tell you, not 30 seconds later, not even, maybe 10 seconds, this shooting star appeared. That's what it looked like. And mind you, this is downtown Santa Monica, and there are no stars even visible. So I thought it was kind of interesting. And that was the first one. But, I've had some weirder stuff since then. One time I had a ball of light drop down in front of my car. Honest to God, I thought it was a bird, but it looked like a glowing golf ball. And I'm like, well, it's not a reflection. I was staring at it long enough to see that. And it just kind of moved back and forth and then darted away. And I've had that happen twice now.
Almost like the reports people get of seeing lights near railway tracks and such like that?
Yeah, it was a tiny ball of light, and this is actually pretty common with people who are having, a lot of encounters. And I've had a lot of weird stuff like that since I've started doing this. One lady I know, I interviewed her, and she was having just major encounters. Her neighbors had seen UFOs hovering over her house. Her friends had seen UFOs with her, and she was being abducted pretty much regularly. And she said she was in telepathic contact with these ETs. And I'm, actually kind of skeptical, but she's very sincere. So I tell her, well, I'd like to see a UFO. And she says she'll see what she can do. So honest to God, she calls me back later, and she says that she's set up a meeting for us to see a UFO. That the ETs told her telepathically that if we show up off the 210 freeway up there in Pasadena, near La Tuna Canyon, actually.
That's right by me, right near where I am right now.
So
Jeff to the balcony.
Jeff to the balcony, huh?
Yeah, and this is right off the freeway, mind you. You're not even really supposed to pull off on the freeway. And so anyway, we show up there at the time we're supposed to go at this dirt road. And this lady, I'll call her Wendy because she doesn't really want her name to be used. She says, this is the place. And so I went up there with her and my sister-in-law and her son. And we started walking up this dirt road, and me and Wendy, we got ahead of the other two and had just reached the top of this dirt road when Wendy grabs my arm and screams and points, and right next to us, not right next to us, it was about 50 feet away, maybe 100 feet away, was a very large glowing sphere. It was kind of just a perfect circle covered with gold lights. It was actually really beautiful and obviously unexplained and very close. Maybe 50 feet off the ground, 25 feet. And it just hovered there in place long enough for me to confirm that it was definitely unusual. I completely forgot about the camera I brought. I was just too amazed. And we were screaming, and then it started to move away, and we tried to run after it, but it moved away way too fast. And
well, that seems to happen way too often, doesn't it? Where even if people has cameras, they're so excited about seeing it, they forget that they have the camera to take a picture of it.
Yeah, and it's also just as common, and this is something I keep running into when I'm writing these books and talking to people, is they will have a camera, and they pick it up and they try to take a picture, and the camera malfunctions. And it's often enough where you can say this is not a coincidence anymore.
Right.
The battery drains, or it won't, whatever it is. The pictures come out blank.
And it's kind of about the same way if you're dealing with spirits or ghosts or anything doing with the paranormal like that. Same thing happens.
Yeah, I think what we're dealing with is, with UFOs is, I think they're often aware that their photo is being taken, and they must be sending out some sort of beam, some electromagnetic thing. I don't know what it could be, microwave. I have no idea. But whatever interferes with electromagnetics, because they can turn off people's cars, and that electromagnetic effects when a UFO hovers over a vehicle are not necessarily accidental.
Well, now, how many have you actually got to see?
UFO-wise?
Right.
Oh, I would say, I never really thought it was that much, but I counted them up one day, and it was, a good 10 really solid sightings that I couldn't explain. And, it seems like every couple of years something will show up.
Maybe you're what we would call a UFO magnet, about like a paranormal investigator that gets EVPs all the time.
And I don't think I'm that unusual, because if you survey, all the UFO researchers, a lot of them have had encounters. Bud Hopkins started his research as a result of a sighting, and certainly not unusual for. I remember the guy who investigated Whitley Strieber's encounters. He ended up writing a book about his own experiences, Ed Conroy. And he was a journalist, mainstream journalist guy. So there's this weird kind of, once you investigate them, they start investigating you type effect.
Well, it's like the old joke: if you think you've got a file with the FBI and you ask them, you'll have a file after you've left. Now, do you ever have the experiences that a lot of multiple contact people have, or even abduction people, where their mind sort of matrix, they're seeing an alien, but their mind makes them remember that they've seen an owl looking through the window or stuff like that?
Have I personally?
Or you or anybody that you've interviewed?
No, I've certainly searched my own history for anything, in terms of contact more than a sighting, and I can't find anything. But as far as other people's and screen memories, yes, and I've heard some really, really interesting ones. And one that kept coming up was clowns. Children would see clowns in their bedroom.
That is a night terror right there.
Yeah, it's one of the symptoms I look for, fear of clowns, which turns out is really common among abductees. And that one lady I talked to said she would see this marionette-type figure come into her room at night. And another lady said the same exact thing. And neither of them was really convinced it was really a clown.
Wow.
And I ended up writing a whole article about this because it was just such a weird pattern. But I've heard lots of stuff, a giant eagle. One that was really kind of bizarre was teddy bears, fuzzy little teddy bears. This lady, that's what she remembered seeing. She says it was as if they were these animated, stuffed animals. But it's the eyes that always give them away. There's always something kind of spooky about the eyes.
About the eyes? Yeah.
And it's interesting, though, because when I interview somebody, I just recently interviewed a fireman, and he had an encounter in Chatsworth, not far from where I live, and also in North Hollywood. And his whole family was in the house, actually. He had two teenage children, and his wife was in bed, and he woke up floating above his bed. And he turned around and looked down at the bed, and he wasn't in it, but his wife was there asleep, and he's in kind of this intense pain. His whole body is just, throbbing with pain. And he opens his eyes, and there's this source of light at the doorway, and he turns and he sees these small creatures. And what he thought was that they were demons. He had no reference point to aliens at this point. And he just hadn't thought about it. And certainly he's been exposed to the idea in popular culture. This was not that long ago. This was in the 2001, I believe, that this happened. Or maybe it was 1996. I haven't transcribed the interview yet. I just interviewed him. But I asked him as well, have you had anything in your childhood? And he said, what do you mean? I'm like, well, has anything strange, happened in your childhood? And he said, well, yeah, I used to think that there were beings watching me from the closet. And that's another pattern that turns up again and again, is this closet thing, that these ETs come into children's rooms through the closets.
There's also a lot talk about ghosts being in the closets, too.
I don't hear that as much. Ghosts seem to appear, everywhere. I think they're around us a lot more than people realize. And if you kind of just tune yourself to them, or if you talk to a medium, and they're much more common than people realize.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead and private chat them to Craig, Jeffrey, or myself, and we'll get them right over to Preston. So I'm sure that people's going to have lots of questions here about UFOs. Right now, where basically in the country is the, I want to say the biggest hot spot, you might say, for UFOs right now?
Well, recently there's been all kinds of activity all across the whole United States. It's kind of gone up a little bit, which is, interesting because it was slowing down there for quite a while. But now, there's been activity in Florida, California, Washington. It's active all over the place. And this is one of the things, there are certain hot spots. Upstate New York is still a hot spot. There's a lot of activity there. And Topanga Canyon, this whole Santa Monica mountain range does have activity. But it's very hard to pin down where the next big hotspot is going to be, or the next big wave.
Well, is there any kind of correlation as to where they're showing up at? I mean, is it around certain places like air bases or uranium, or I mean,
yeah.
Is there a correlation to anything?
There are some correlations, absolutely. I noticed that a lot of the hot spots are kind of rural areas next to large urban areas, which may be one, way of telling where these hot spots are. But UFOs have been seen over mines. That's something that turns up again and again. So obviously they're, interested in the metals that are coming from there. There's a number of cases like that.
Seems like there's a lot around water.
Right.
Yeah, water and reservoirs, but they also might be interested in energy that might be exuded in some way from tectonic plates.
That's true too. There's been, not far, right before the Northridge earthquake, there was a number of reports of UFOs here in California. There's a number of, UFOs have been seen as well over telephone lines. And I actually interviewed a gentleman who was inside a UFO while they were actually sucking energy off of these telephone lines, which might be the reason why they're doing it. Because it turns out, this method that we have of transporting electricity through wires isn't 100% efficient, and a lot of energy is lost right out there, just off the wire.
That'll explain some of our bills, I guess.
Well, the ETs are scooping it up.
Exactly.
In some cases.
I heard that there was a wave of UFO sightings in 𝘍𝘬𝘮, New Jersey, which is very close to where I used to live back east, and over the reservoirs in 𝘍𝘬𝘮, and that was like, what? Oh, why did I move away just when everything gets interesting?
Oh yeah, and they got some really amazing photos of this object sending down beams of light into that reservoir, and people would line up and watch this. Sometimes UFOs put on displays, clearly trying to, it's weird. Normally they're very evasive. Other times they want to be seen. They're coming out there marching in style, and hundreds of people are looking at them. And that's when we have this wave, like Gulf Breeze, like the Topanga Canyon wave, like what happened up in upstate New York in, the 80s, I believe it was. So, but yeah, there are things that attract UFOs. Going back to that other question, because you reminded me, the Lorenzens, Jim and Coral Lorenzen, who were, the pioneers of civilian UFO research, they were able to predict where UFOs would appear because the military would start building an installation, whether it's a nuclear power plant or an airport or what have you, and UFOs would appear over it. And over again, this occurred, and they were able to predict sightings would occur over certain installations as they were being built. And another thing is people are actually being able to call down UFOs using lights. And one amazing story, this guy I interviewed, Rick Liebert was his name. Actually, I interviewed his friend Arnie Weiler first. And Arnie was a set designer for NBC. And they were working on this whole thing down by the George Page Museum, the La Brea Tar Pits, that area, where they were going to set up lights in the shape of a peacock's tail. Part of the peacock, the whole NBC logo.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was this big, what it was this big bright disc covered with really bright pitchel lights you can control and program. And no sooner had they lit it up when these two objects come swooping in right over, this is downtown Santa Monica again, right over the city. And Arnie Weiler, he turns to Rick Liebert, who set up the lights. That's his job. Rick Liebert is the kind of special effects guy. And Rick Liebert says, "Oh, you know what? That happens every time I set these lights up. It's the weirdest thing. These guys come in and check it out." And I'm like, Arnie was telling me this, and I'm like, well, I've got to talk to Rick Liebert. And so I called Rick Liebert up, and he confirmed that incident, and said he couldn't really remember many others except one that really impressed him, which was down in San Diego. And at that time, this was like the late 1970s, I believe. They went to the top of the tallest building in San Diego, and they set up this green argon laser, like 22 watts, and it would play in beat to music, like Pink Floyd or other rock music. It was a publicity stunt, and it was designed to attract attention, and it absolutely did, because there was like 10 people up there on the top of this building watching and operating this laser as a very large V-shaped object came gliding down way high up, and suddenly kind of just appeared right over the building there. And he said it couldn't have been more than 50 feet up above them. And it was flat black, and it had little green lights along each end of the V, and just moved along there perfectly silently. And kind of right up above it and off in the distance was another little object, which is another thing I've noticed. When you see one UFO, more than likely there's another one out there in the sky somewhere. They often travel in pairs.
Ah.
So,
well,
but that was they were trying to call down a UFO, and they did it. And there's a bunch of cases like that.
Well, now,
I mean,
did they get that idea from Encounters of the Third Kind, or did the Encounters of the Third Kind get that idea from them?
Well, Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out in late 1977, so most likely this was a little more recent, I would guess.
I don't know. I do have the exact date of that, but
Yeah, you said
actually they weren't actually going up there to call down a UFO. I said that mistakenly. They were just trying to attract attention, and that's what happened.
Well, now,
and you said that they were doing this. I think I misheard the sentence, because it started out like you were saying something about the La Brea tar pits, and then suddenly Santa Monica, and I was like, wait a minute, those don't correlate.
Santa Monica, they're right next to each other. Santa Monica, the George Page Museum, and the La Brea tar pit.
Yeah, it's right next door to SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, and the museum there. Yeah, I was just there the other day.
Yeah, that whole incident took place right on the lawn there of the George Page Museum.
Oh.
Now, being a MUFON field investigator, do you just investigate the ones that are around your area, or do you get to travel around the United States, different areas?
Well, I basically take the cases that come to me, which are local, but certainly by now, I've gotten a lot of people contacting me through my website and, through friends and through referrals. So I get cases from all across, the United States and the world, actually. And, investigate them as best as I can. Certainly, I've talked to people from all across the U.S. who are having, incredible encounter experiences. And not just your typical, I've been abducted by a very tight alien, laid out, examined, and then sent on my way. So that's a lot stranger than that for a lot of people, I think.
We'll get into more detail of what all happens when you go out on an investigation a little bit later, and we'll get into your books in just a little bit. I think it's about time that we take a quick break, though. So if you do have questions, don't forget please go ahead and private chat them to Craig, Jeff, or myself, and we'll get them right over to Preston. And if you're listening from somewhere from around the world right now and you're not in the chat room, you can do so. Come over to para-x.com, click on the show chat button on the right side of the page, and then click on the player button at the top of the page, and you'll be able to hear the show also. So, Craig, I think what we'll do is we're going to take us, 6-7 minute break here. So you want to take and let us go take a break now?
I sure will. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. You're listening to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Paranormal View right here on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for being here with us tonight. It's a very cold night here where I'm at. It's going down, I think, into the teens again tonight. So we've got the heater on and bundled up and having a good time doing the show. And if you're not in here with us, please come on over, para-x.com, and you can have fun with us. Remember, if you've got questions, private chat them over to Craig, Jeffrey, or myself, and we'll get them right in. I want to welcome Preston Dennet back. And we're going to jump right in here and start talking about some of your books. I know one of the big things is everybody talks about seeing UFOs and everything, and then they start saying, show me the evidence, you know. We haven't captured, I don't think, one intact, so we can't really show that. But
well, none that aren't on any Army bases anyway.
Oh, right. But your book, the Coronado Island Incident, there is some interesting stuff that took place there, and there was some actual kind of evidence. What was that particular evidence?
There was actually quite a bit of evidence. It was medical evidence in a number of different forms. It was up to and including an implant, which was removed by Dr. Roger Lear and his whole team, and which shows some very unusual properties. It's a really amazing case because it doesn't involve just one person, but a group of people actually who experienced a simultaneous visitation on the same night in March 1994 in a hotel room on Coronado Island, which is actually a pretty unusual place to have an encounter, considering Coronado is paramilitary. This is where the Navy SEALs do their training, and it's a very crowded island, very touristy, and it's just not really a likely place for an encounter. But as you know, if you've gotten involved in this research or this subject, these encounters can happen pretty much anywhere. And whatever the case, this is where it happened. And basically it involved, there was 3 different couples. There was Mike Evans, who co-wrote the book with me, and his wife, Gina, in one hotel room. In the next hotel room were 2 ladies. Nancy is the name of one of them, that's a pseudonym. And the other, and then there was a 3rd room with another couple, a husband and wife. And each of them on that night experienced gray-type ETs coming into their bedroom. Now, mind you, none of them remembered this except one of them. One of them is 𝘍𝘬𝘮 Angeloni. She's actually been having experiences her whole life. And she remembers them without the aid of hypnosis. And so she recalled what did happen that morning. But all Mike Evans remembered was waking up in the middle of the night to the light filling the hotel room. And he thought he had actually had a bloody nose or hit his lip. But when he woke up in the morning, he had this puncture wound in his ear and a spot of blood on the pillow. And so he went to the doctor, and the doctor told him, well, you must have stuck something in your ear. But he hadn't. So he had this weird puncture wound. And he was also feeling very fluish, very sick the next morning. And the same was true for Nancy in the next hotel room. She had had a very fitful night, and she woke up feeling very ill. And in the third room, it was the same type of thing. So all of these people had some sort of medical evidence. Now, Nancy, she had a scar appear on that evening. And it was later when Mike found out that he had actually been abducted that night that other people also went under hypnosis. And this whole scenario kind of emerged. And Mike Evans ended up going, he's a nurse, and he ended up going to get some medical tests taken. And some of these tests, MRIs, show, what is diagnosed as a foreign body. In his brain, in particular, there's several objects which they don't know what they are. So it's a pretty interesting case.
Well, now, the ones that had the implants, did they take the implants out and look at them and see what they're made of and what they're supposed to be doing?
Not in Mike Evans' case, particularly because it's in his brain and he doesn't feel like having brain surgery quite yet. But in Nancy's case, yes, they took the one out of her leg, and it was very interesting because it seemed to be composed mostly of a iron that's similar to meteoritic iron, though the composition was kind of different. And it was identical to other things that have been found in other people's bodies, and the magnetic. And what's really odd is there's no foreign body response. The body will normally build a calcified kind of deposit around this stuff. So not only was there like no entrance wound, the body was not reacting to it. And now Dr. Lear has removed a number of implants, and this one that he removed from Nancy was not the most unusual one. He's had ones that were actually emitting electromagnetic radiation, a signal of some kind, which they were able to detect with an EMF detector. And so the implant research is still really ongoing, but it's the smoking gun of UFO research, and it's something you can't deny that it is physical evidence. But, there is all kinds of evidence we have. The evidence is in the public arena, honestly. There are 3,000 landing trace cases now, and the number of medical cases is really astounding. And that was the subject of my first book, actually, UFO Healings, which covered 100 cases of people who have had a physiological improvement. And there was some really amazing evidence in those cases as well. But yeah, the Coronado Island incident, I'm going to say that's probably one of the more, as far as physical evidence, convincing cases that I've, dealt with.
Regarding healing, I once read, and of course these are the kind of cases that always happen in South America, but that one elderly gentleman was sighting a UFO and was hit by a bright light, and all of his adult teeth grew back in.
Right, that's Ventura Maceres. That's one of the cases I did include in the book. His case was actually really well researched, and he was interviewed by a number of different officials, UFO investigators and government officials. There was physical evidence in that case as well, burned eucalyptus trees. And if you know eucalyptus trees, they're very, very tall, and only the tops of these eucalyptus trees were burned. A whole river of catfish turned up dead, and so it was a pretty powerful case. And there's a number of cases like that. One case occurred in Damon, Texas, to 2 police officers, and they were actually on their way back from a football game when they saw this UFO. They described it as, about 50 feet long, and as they watched, it sent down this purple beam of light, which kind of played across the field and then hit their car. And they could feel it. It kind of made them tingle, and it was a little bit warm. And what's interesting is one of the officers, Deputy Good, he had been bitten by his son's baby pet alligator just a day earlier, and had a gash on his finger. And when this light hit it, he could feel his finger tingling there. And they rushed away, and he whipped off the bandage and the cut was gone. Had been healed pretty much instantly.
Wow.
And this was verified by his partner, and they were investigated by, a guy from the Air Force. It was a big case, and, not the only case like it. I've got other cases where flesh wounds were cured, pretty much instantly, a la Star Trek, by these beams of light. So, the evidence is out there.
Now, in your book, UFOs over New York, which
right.
There's some interesting things there. What was the UFO connection to the TWA Flight 800? What happened there?
Well, that's pretty interesting. A lot of people don't know about that connection, but there was a lot of that was a very terrible tragedy, in which some 100 more people were killed. And at the time that this aircraft went down, what they thought might be a missile was seen. Now, it turned out a lot of people saw this, and it apparently was not a missile. It was some bright thing of light. What it was has never really been determined, but whether or not it played a part in the crash of this TWA flight is a definite possibility. And what's particularly interesting about that case is it was like the 4th or 5th flight that had recently reported seeing strange lights around it. So it's this is part of the whole conspiracy culture a little bit, because a lot of people think that that Flight 800 was actually shot down by our own military. And certainly the possibility of a bomb has never been completely discounted. But
don't get me started on conspiracy theories. I'm one of the people who go with the idea that no plane went down in Pennsylvania, so don't.
I'm right there with you. But that the TWA Flight 100, that really hits home with me when I saw that. Because I was actually living in McToursville, Pennsylvania, and all the kids from the French club and their chaperones were on that flight. And I actually moved into town the day after that happened.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Well, apparently it wasn't a missile. I mean, there was a guy there who, his job was to shoot missiles, and he's familiar with all, SAM 1, SAM 2s, and all this, he says. And it was not a missile what he saw. So I don't know what it is.
Now,
if the plane struck a UFO or not. They said ultimately the explanation was the air conditioning sparked in the fuel tanks and it blew up that way.
Huh.
But I don't know if we'll ever know. But what's really interesting is there was a weird side note is there was a contactee who was showed an airlining crashing, and he asked, "Oh my God, is there anything I can do to stop this?" And the aliens told him no. And 2 weeks later, TWA Flight 800 crashed.
Wow.
So this is a contactee in England, no less. So, on the other side of the country. Bizarre, huh?
Well, now, does MUFON ever, I guess, work with the government or any kind of have anything to do with them anymore? I know the government says that there's not anything and they quit doing it, but I'm sure that they still, on some cases, don't they send people out to investigate secretly?
Our government? I'm sure they do. I'm sure that the Air Force is continuing to be interested in this. Recently, there was a wave of sightings over Stevensville, Texas. This was, last year or the year before, and it was a very big media event, and the Air Force was right there, and they issued conflicting statements. They changed their story several times. There were eyewitnesses who said that they were actually threatened by officials not to speak about what they had seen. So clearly they're still interested in what's going on. As far as MUFON, no, MUFON is a civilian group, and they'll work with, within city government, but it's not generally federally. And federally, this whole subject is taboo.
Taboo, right.
While at the same time, we're neck deep in it. There's no doubt about it that we have crashed flying saucers. I don't think that we've got enough whistleblowers coming out of the woodwork.
Oh, yes.
To say that this is, pretty definite probability that this is going on. And it just irritates me to no end because, we're going through this huge economic crisis, this energy crisis, and this environmental crisis. 3 big major things that are really paralyzing our society. And all of them could be really solved or definitely alleviated a great deal by just releasing this ET technology that we already have.
That we have, yeah. Well, I'm sure that they're already using a lot of that technology in different things also.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Certainly that's what Colonel Corso said in his book, The Day After Roswell. And, they've not been able... He's a controversial figure, of course, but no one's been able to disprove his credentials. And what he said was basically that exact same thing, that computers and fiber optics and Kevlar and night vision and all that was straight from the Roswell crash. And, you have to wonder that he's not the only person saying that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well,
All the reverse engineering and all, yeah.
It's not hard to find these people. I've talked to a number of government people myself, and recently a bunch of Navy people have been calling me and telling me about their encounters aboard Navy ships. And some of them have had some really incredible encounters, not just sightings. I've talked to one guy who was a submariner, and he was telling me about some of the underwater UFO activity. Because he would not doubt it takes place because there's a very, very deep channel that runs along up the coast here in Southern California. And another gentleman told me how a whole ship watched these UFOs kind of right there on the horizon, going up and out of the water or kind of coming back down and hovering there. And a number of stories like that. So a few much, much more intense.
Well,
yeah.
Basically, didn't they have the same thing? I think it was in Michigan at Sag Harbor or something like that.
It's all over the place. There was a chapter in my book, UFOs over California, that I devoted specifically to underwater UFO activity, because it turns out Southern California has a whole bunch of it right here in the Santa Catalina Channel. And I researched it and found out there's a number of areas across the world where this does happen. 𝘏𝘦𝘳𝘮 Reservoir, that one in New Jersey, that was pretty famous.
Yeah.
And
it helps to grow up there to know how to pronounce all the stuff. I grew up in a little town called Pequannock, New Jersey, and even though the original Indian pronunciation is Pequannock, we always got a kick out of hearing what few times we'd actually be on the news for whatever reason, and they'd say Pequannock. We're like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about.
Now, back to New York. You also had in there about the 1965 blackout of New York, which was a really tremendous thing that happened, which you say was caused by UFO. How did that get connected, and how did we find out that it was caused by UFOs?
I'm going to call that New York's absolute biggest UFO event. The Hudson Valley was big, and Whitley Strieber, he came from New York. That was big. But this whole blackout, I think, is one of the biggest UFO events, not only of New York, but of the entire country. Mind you, this blackout affected a lot of people. Almost a third of the United States was plunged into this blackout. And right when it occurred, there was literally hundreds of witnesses all across, upstate New York, the Niagara area, who were reporting these UFOs. And it wasn't just one UFO. There was several UFOs apparently sighted and even photographed. And one was seen by a pilot and his student as they were landing at an airport. And it was a very large globe of light, which kind of took off. Other object was seen by a group of drivers who were driving along a road, also in the same area. And that the newspapers said that they received literally hundreds of calls from people reporting these objects. And so it is one of the closest associations we have, actually, of UFOs and a power outage. And this power outage took them a long time to figure out what exactly had caused it. They finally traced it to this one power plant and said that this is where it had failed. But it turns out, there is some evidence that ETs were directly involved because there was a contactee. And he said that the aliens actually contacted him during the blackout and said that they were responsible for this blackout and were doing it kind of as a display of their power. And that they said we were much too warlike and we would have to learn how to be more spiritual and stop fighting with each other if we were ever going to progress. So it's a very interesting case, and during that year in particular, there was a number of other cases just like it, where UFOs were seen in conjunction with power failures. And apparently this power failure did cause concerns at very high levels of government, and was it actually brought up in the whole congressional investigation to UFOs. So it's the granddaddy of the power failure UFO cases, and I think probably it was a display. Certainly we've seen that kind of behavior from UFOs over and over again, where they can cause power outages in maybe even just a vehicle, one car, or whole neighborhoods, or much, much larger, as in this case, where they took down, a third of the United States. So, which I think speaks towards UFO hostility. If they wanted to take over our planet, ETs, and I think that there's a myriad of them out there, not just grays.
Right.
But,
Which, that was also one of the questions that I had. Aliens, I guess, been labeled with different names and different types. Do we know how many, and how did we come up with that?
Well, I certainly don't know how many. I've talked to a lot of people. I'm going to say about 70%, maybe a little more, tell me that they've seen some version of what you would typically describe as a gray type ET. By that, I mean shorter than the average human, 5 feet to about 3 feet, with a large head, very large, dark eyes, no hair, a kind of vestigial nose and mouth, the typical description that's very well known, I think, within our own culture and even among people who don't even believe in this kind of stuff. And I get a lot of that, but you know what I get also a lot of is kind of more like the hybrid of that, where you have figures that seem almost human and could pass for human walking down the street if they wore sunglasses.
Like the Nordics?
No, not Nordics. These are large, dark-eyed, slender, kind of white-skinned figures, which are, I'm thinking they're hybrids. I get some of that. I do get a lot of, recently, which kind of surprises me, of Nordics. Absolutely 100% human-looking. You would not know that they were not human. Often they're described as, particularly good-looking, or, beautiful or handsome, well-built. So I keep running across that. And another very common thing that I run across is the very tall, kind of a grasshopper-type looking, or praying mantis. I get kind of those two descriptions about 10% of the time.
So that's different than the reptilians?
I haven't, that's different from the reptilians, which I haven't gotten a whole lot of, one or two, and I haven't gotten hardly any of that, or the Men in Black, for that matter, which is another whole phenomenon, which I haven't really run across. Maybe
see, the thing with
robotic.
With the Men in Black, I always figure, I don't know whether or not they're aliens working with our government or they're our government working with them, kind of thing.
Right, I don't know. It's such a weird kind of underground sort of, I don't get a lot of stories from it, so I can't really say that I've investigated any cases firsthand. And I don't really know what to make of it. I sometimes think that there are two groups. There's the government agents who are certainly coming down and harassing people. But in other cases, they don't seem to be human at all. They seem to be a little bit off.
Sherry in the chat room actually indicates whether or not the phenomenon of the black-eyed kids might be either aliens or maybe they're the alien hybrids.
I don't know about the phenomenon of black-eyed kids. So
I'll send you the link. They're really creepy.
That is. But I wouldn't be surprised if we have people running around on Earth who, are the ETs. In a number of cases, particularly UFOs over New York, there was a number of cases just like that, where ETs were seen in places you would not expect, in bookstores and along subways. It happened to one lady. She saw a gray type ET, and everyone was ignoring it, but she said it was absolutely an ET, and it was right there on the subway.
Wow.
Do you think that they would be able to project to most people that they would look human, and maybe to just a certain person or whatever show their real identity?
That appears to be the case, because other people aren't noticing these figures in a lot of cases. So I don't know what other conclusion you can draw, but it seems to match. There are certain cases where people are looking at a UFO and someone standing right next to them doesn't see it. And so the ETs do have this ability and have it refined down to inches, apparently.
Oddly enough, and I'm a huge, apart from researching real stuff, I'm also very much into science fiction. But of recent seasons on the TV show Doctor Who, there's referred to as a perception filter, and that aliens are able to project a way that you just don't. You can probably see them if you were really paying attention, but it's sort of like it's making you not want to pay attention to them.
Yeah, they are excellent hypnotists, for that matter. I know when I'm interviewing someone, they'll be describing their encounter to me, and one lady, she said she was running away from this UFO in terror, that was chasing her through a field, and it was just a few feet above her, and out shot this beam of light, and it struck her, and she said everything was fine. After that, all fear left her. She had no fear at all, and as this thing sucked her right up into it. So they can turn off our fear pretty easily. And other people have told me they'll see a UFO, and then it starts to kind of leave their memory. And one lady, I interviewed her about this kind of extensive encounter where she had beings coming into her room, and she left and went over to her boyfriend's and watched her house from across the street, and there was lights going on in the house, and she remembered none of this. When I called her up a couple of weeks later, she did not remember any of it at all, and was really disturbed about it. But I had her, on record recording that, this experience had happened to her. So it can actually leave your memory shortly after it happens. Another gentleman I interviewed, this was the Topanga Canyon UFO wave, and on that one night, a bunch of people were seeing objects in the sky, and he pulled over with his friends to watch this object ejecting other objects and flying around it, and his friends wouldn't come out of the car. They didn't want to see it, and he said he had a really strange hypnotic effect about the whole thing. He was thinking, is this a movie? What is going on? But he was unnaturally calm, he said, and he just drove away after a little bit. Normally you'd think, you're seeing something like that in the sky, you'd be jumping up and down and calling the police. Well, a number of people did actually call the police on that night. But he calmly got back to his car and kept driving.
Now, just this past week, they recently released that other planets similar to ours has been found.
Right.
Like 600 light years away, which is an incredible distance. Doesn't sound like it is, but it's an incredible distance that we have no way of getting there within a lifetime. And with distances like that, where do you think that these aliens come from? And they have to have some sort of a power source or some way to be able to warp or something or other to be able to get from one place to the other to be able to come here and visit the Earth.
Yeah, I would suspect that's the case. I don't know where they came from. Certainly, we've got theories and some indications. Zeta Reticuli on the Betty Hill star map is one.
The Zeta Reticuli system.
Right, and the ETs are pretty tight-lipped about that. often. I mean, there's some indications. Some ETs have said they're from Orion. Some have said from Andromeda. Every now and then, they'll give little answers like that, but often, the people I've talked to have asked ETs outright, and they'll say stuff like, "We're from a place you don't know about yet," or kind of evasive answers. So it's really hard to say where they're from. I'm a big believer that we're dealing with biological beings like us who do come from other planets, and certainly are traveling in these craft which are metallic, and they're showing up on radar, and they're landing in fields and leaving traces, and beings are coming out with, leaving scars on people, both, emotionally and physically. I think.
Now, what about the theory that they might be interdimensional travelers coming from alternate universes?
I think they've got that whole thing mastered. When you see a UFO, I don't think it's flying in the conventional sense of, using friction with air. I think, because a lot of these UFOs, boom, they appear, then boom, they disappear. I had one case in the Topanga Canyon, which really baffled me. It was the first one I'd run across like it, where the UFO turned transparent. I'm like, what? Because I wasn't sure if I was even hearing this witness correctly. He said, no, it floated over the house. There was 4 guys who saw it, and I interviewed all of them. It sent down this beam of light, which struck the house and kind of moved across it, and then slowly moved away and turned transparent and disappeared. So they apparently do have the ability of not only cloaking themselves, but shrinking themselves down to a little dot and traveling through another dimension. There are a number of cases like that, where people will see a very large UFO and then it shrinks down, or vice versa. They'll see a ball of light, and then boom, this giant triangular-shaped craft appears. So,
I still think that a lot of people feels that they come from another planet, which is similar to Earth, but their makeup could be something else to where they could live on a different type of planet than what we could. So, no telling where they might come from.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's weird because the Greys are not wearing masks or anything, or space helmets, and in fact, none of the ETs that that people are seeing, that they're telling me about, are reporting them wearing helmets. So apparently that they breathe oxygen like us. And that's one thing that kept me out of UFO research for a while, was the fact that these ETs are too much like Star Trek. They have eyes, nose, mouth. They look like us. I really wanted tentacles and something different. I just couldn't believe that this was. But it's what we're stuck with, is I guess my point. And I think what this is saying is that the fact that the ETs look so much like us, and in fact in many cases exactly like us, raises a lot of questions about human origins and our relationship to the ETs themselves.
Okay, I've just unmuted my mic. I'm curious about something because we have an interesting phenomenon that sometimes happens during our show. Is anyone of the 3 of you typing?
Not right now, nope.
And Henry isn't.
Just what you see if you see me come in chat.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in chat. And okay, so I'm hearing typing, and the chat room's hearing typing, even when my mic is muted. Because I do a lot. I do not a transcript, but a synopsis of the show, and I put in links, so all of your book links will be on the page and all that. But occasionally I've been hearing typing, and it's a different kind of typing than what my keyboard would sound like. So I'm like, here we go again. And Karen with an E, Mind Abilities, she's hearing clicking. I'm not hearing it this very second, but there have been times, even when my mic is muted, I'm like, there it is again.
No.
Yeah, I heard it as well. It's not me.
And he's on a phone, so.
That's probably the answer.
My laptop keys are actually pretty quiet, so I don't think it's me.
No.
Very light worker figures the ETs are probably taking notes also.
Oh, they probably are. They like to listen to our show a whole lot.
Maybe they're smoking with their buddies last week.
I think.
Well, Jose thinks it's like an old typewriter, but it doesn't sound like the old typewriter when I was in the haunted house a few weeks ago.
I think what we'll do is we're going to take another break here in just a second. But I do want to remind everybody about our Christmas Eve show. Do join us if you're able to, because it's going to be a good one. And do go to theparanormalview.com and click on Santa. Send us a letter. Tell us what you're wanting for Christmas, or tell us what you think is the magic of Christmas. And some of those is going to get read on the air, so we should have a really good time with that.
And you're welcome to also put those, post those on our Paranormal View page on Facebook. Just look for Paranormal View. There we are.
You can do that also.
Yeah.
And if you go to the main menu on the left side, you can click on Saturday shows and go down to the Paranormal View and click on it. And you'll see where we have a blog and our show page and all kinds of other goodies. And you can also listen to our podcast right through that. So that's real interesting. We're listening. We have Preston Dennet with us tonight. We're trying to listen.
We are listening.
Well, we're trying to listen. And we're going to jump off, take another break. And Jeff, I'm going to let you take us out here. So
okay. Well, you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with tonight's guest, ufologist, author Preston Dennet, author of multiple books on UFOs, ghosts, and even human levitation and astral projection. I love that. I'm studying it and so wish I could do it. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this musical interlude.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Paranormal View right here on the Para-X Radio Network. Want to welcome everybody for being here tonight, and if you're listening from somewhere around the world, we want to welcome you also. And you can come over to para-x.com and click on the show chat button on the right side of the page and the player button at the top of the page and be in with all these wonderful people. So come on over and have a great time with us as we have Preston Dennet with us, and we're talking about UFOs and all kinds of other things that he has written about. So with that, I want to welcome Preston back. Before we left, we'd talked a little bit about one thing that I was curious a little bit about also, that Jeff was chomping at the bits, I think, to talk about. And that's levitation.
Right.
Now, I have, I don't know anything about levitation other than, just heard about it. So, does levitation really work? Have you ever seen anybody levitated?
I haven't seen it in person. I have seen some pretty impressive videos, but not in person. But I was like you. I'd heard of it certainly, but I knew nothing about it. But was going through my circle of family and friends, one by one, and asking them, have you ever had any unusual experiences? And a friend of my father's, someone I've known for many, many years, and still talk to quite frequently, told me that as a child, this was back in the early 1950s, she had a levitation experience. And she was just about, 7 or 8 years old, and was actually on the way to the doctor's office with her family, and was in the building and had was running down the corridor and had turned the corner and gotten out of view, and suddenly she said she lifted off the ground and she was flying. And I'm like, oh, well, you just thought you were flying. She's like, no. Everyone has tried to convince me that this didn't happen. And she swears up and down and sideways that she flew all the way down the corridor, turned the next corner, flew all the way down to the end, and was landed gently on her feet. And the whole time she's looking around to see what is causing this, how can this possibly be? And there was nothing there. She said she just flew. She ran back. She told her parents, who of course did not believe her, and she tried over and over and over again to duplicate the experience, but was never able to. And so I'm like, wow. I interviewed her. I'm like, that's an unusual experience. And I vaguely remembered hearing about saints who had levitated. Saint Joseph of Cupertino is probably the most famous, a monk back in the 1600s, I believe, or 1700s. And Saint Teresa of Avila, another very religious person both of these people would apparently levitate during religious trances. And I did some research on that and discovered, wow, there's quite a bit of evidence, a lot more than I had realized. In fact, voluminous evidence. And I started asking everyone I knew, have you levitated? Have you ever flown? Have you ever heard of this? And I found out that I had a friend of a friend, actually, who had the same type of experience in her childhood. Had flown up and down the staircase and had a few other experiences where she just floated off the ground. Like, wow, this is incredible. And so I decided I would research it really in depth. And I found out that levitation appears in all different cultures. There are accounts stretching back, 2,000 years at least. It's occurring not even to the present day. There are cases that are coming out. So it's pretty universal. And there's a lot of evidence to support it. It's been repeated in laboratory settings on several occasions in different places with usually mediums. So the evidence for it is really very extensive.
Well, can you levitate yourself, or do you have to do it to others?
Most cases of people levitating themselves spontaneously, I actually broke it down into different categories. And turns out that there are about 7 different categories. And the first one, which I think contains most of them, I kind of term ecstatic levitation. And this usually involves, the saints, or, nuns and monks and people of that type who, under their meditation with God, kind of just rise up. And it's certainly well confirmed in a lot of cases. Another I call meditative levitation, and this is kind of what we see in the Far East with, yogis and shamans and mystics. And I differ it from ecstatic levitation because it's apparently a fostered talent. They know how to do this. They know exactly what they need to do it, and they achieve this kind of levitative state through various exercises involving breathing and meditation and fasting and chastity, mantras, all these different methods. But, there are other categories. Another I kept running from, it's called crisis levitation. And there are a good dozen cases where people have experienced falls or even illnesses, and as a result have a levitation experience. And probably one of the most common of all is mediumistic levitations, and that involves mediums, like Daniel Douglas Home, back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. He levitated hundreds of times before scientists, before all kinds of people. And probably the most famous case of that kind. And if there's others, sleeping levitation, people will levitate during their sleep. There's a number of cases like that. One I've termed traveling levitation, because there are a number of cases where people are seen using what you would term supernatural agility is another word for it, which people basically, particularly in the Far East, have mastered this ability where they can travel long distances. But it's also present in Native American cultures. Native American runners could do this as well. And then there's spontaneous levitations. And that's kind of a catch-all category for people who have, where there's real no obvious trigger. It just kind of happens spontaneously. Usually the children. In fact, there seems to be this stage of age from about 5 to age 10 where children experience this, and it's not that uncommon. I've collected some 300 cases, or 350 total, of levitation. So the evidence for it is totally, there's just so much of it. It's mountainous.
Now, I do have get my tongue straightened out there. I do have a question that's come in from the chat room from Sherry. She wants to know what the difference between levitation and psychokinesis to float is.
Well, levitation could be termed psychokinesis, but generally, levitation is the ability to float without any physical device. We're not talking with wires or sticks or anything like this, or illusions. This is just self-levitation. And there are levitation cases where multiple people have levitated. Someone will grab onto a levitator and they'll float, or even two people. But there are not a whole lot of cases where a person levitates other people. It does happen. There was a guy in Russia who could levitate other people by placing his hands around them. And he's able to do this in front of large crowds of people. 𝘏𝘦𝘳𝘮 was his name, Boris 𝘏𝘏𝘮. And so there are cases where other people have levitated other people. And so psychokinesis is kind of like telekinesis in a way, where it's the ability to move objects with your mind. And apparently there is some actual force that is emitted from the human body, which is allowing this to happen. There was a psychic in Russia who they were able to test a magnetic field coming off of that was, equally powerful, comparable to the Earth. She was well known for moving objects with her mind, and has been photographed doing this through glass boxes and through various, other obstacles. And I've seen the films of this, actually. And they were actually able to record, incredible magnetic fields coming out of her hands. So this is a talent we all apparently have. As far as levitation, each culture, I think, has kind of their own approach to it. The Native Americans have their approach which is different from African sorcerers, which is different from, the Haitian voodoo cases, which is different from the Far East yogi cases, which is different from your average, housewife or businessman here in America who, does it spontaneously.
Now, I guess then just anybody, if they had, I don't know, do you have to go into a trance to be able to do it, or is there a special thing you have to say or something you have to be hooked up with to be able to do it?
Right. Well, it depends. If you're going to go after this intentionally, there are different ways of doing it. I mean, through yogi, there's a process called pranayama, and this is through yoga. Generally, I wouldn't recommend someone trying to do this unless they're a serious yoga student, and they know all the asanas or the postures and all the 7 ways of living, the right ways of living. There's a whole culture involved with yoga, but there is a method within yoga itself that does lead to levitation. It does involve intense meditation and intense breathing practices. But as far as the average, modern day person, I think the approach that's best suited to, someone like you or I would be through astral projection. And there seems to be a really strong connection through out-of-body experiences and levitation. And for example, Robert Monroe, who is very well known, he's released a series of 3 books about his own out-of-body experiences. He also had 2 levitation experiences, which is, not as well known. And another lady, Marilyn Hughes, she's still alive and has released, has written dozens of books about her out-of-body experiences. She's also experienced multiple levitations. I've interviewed her personally about it. So I think that is one method that the average person can try and use to achieve this levitated state. And apparently levitation is kind of a way of connecting with the astral energies. This is one of the major theories that a lot of the investigators have, posed.
Now, that was a great question too, Sherry, by the way. Have you guys got some more questions on levitation?
I don't.
Helps if I unmute my mic. And my mic was muted again, and I'm still hearing typing. Not on human levitation. I was actually very interested in the out-of-body experiences like astral projection. That's something I've studied a long time, and I've tried. I've come close, but I have not succeeded that I've remembered. I understand a lot of astral projection happens during dream states, but that most of us forget that when we woke up. So who knows how
Right.
often I've been doing it. But I would love to be able to both lucid dream and astral project. That's something I've always been interested in.
Yeah, I actually got really good at that at one point, and did write a whole book about my experiences out-of-body exploring. A beginner's guide is what it's called. It was released by Hampton Roads. But what happened to me was my mother died, and which was, of course, terribly tragic. And interestingly, at the service, I saw her ghost. I didn't believe it at the time. I thought I was hallucinating, but because I was very skeptical. But I started getting involved in recording my dreams, and kind of getting interested in these types of subjects a little bit, and eventually picked up Robert Monroe's book, Out of Body Exploring, or Out of Body Journeys, I believe it's called, Journeys. And he gave exercises on how to do it. And I tried the exercises, and it took me about a month of doing them really in earnest before I started having experiences. And I'd pop out of my body. I remember the first time vividly. I thought I had died, literally. It was pretty scary. And I dived right back into my body and woke up, and then I was ecstatic. I'm like, wow, I actually did it. And that happened a couple of times until I finally got over the fear barrier pretty quickly. And then would just get so excited I would lose consciousness. So this went on for months of me learning how to stay conscious for more than a few seconds, and to where I could actually travel around the house or visit other friends. And I got really good at it. I was able to go off to the other dimensions, visit my mother, who is deceased, and visit all kinds of places. Visit your higher self, visit the Akashic records, all kinds of just really incredible stuff. And what I love about this stuff or astral travel, is it's easy to do. Anybody can do it. It can be a very steep learning curve for some people, but I think if you put the effort forth, it's pretty easy to do. It's 3 simple steps. All you have to do is just physically relax. Generally, it works for me best falling asleep or waking up in the morning. Just become absolutely as relaxed as you can be without falling asleep. And then you do the same thing with your mind. You kind of relax all that chatter that's going on in your mind, which is constant. It's this constant voiceover almost that we all have. It's just going on constantly, and you just kind of let that go a little bit, as much as you can, until it starts turning into images. And you're so super relaxed that you start to feel, one of 5 sensations, either heaviness or lightness, or maybe numbness, or even kind of this electrical feeling, which is actually really good, this sort of vibration. The vibratory state is what it's actually called. And that means you're primed to go. The last step is just using, kind of mantras like, I want to go out of my body, or I am out of my body. Visualizations as well. Imagining yourself floating up, or imagine yourself swinging on a swing back and forth. Anything that involves movement, jogging. It's those 3 steps. Physically relax, mentally relax, and then using visualizations and verbalizations. And that'll work for just about anybody. I've taught a lot of people how to do this, even with my own family. My brother, my sister, my sister-in-law, they were able to have some really profound out-of-body experiences.
Now,
Have you tried any kind of astral travel to try and track down UFOs as well? Or have anybody in the Akashic records been able to assist as to what they might be?
I haven't. It's funny because it's a different state of consciousness. You get out there and you kind of forget a lot of your intentions. And I think you'll be much more successful at it if you can really cement the intention to complete a task that evening. And that's what I would do. I would say, tonight I want to go to the Akashic records, or tonight I want to visit my mother, or tonight I want to see my higher self, or something like that. And I never actually was able to successfully do the whole UFO thing. So no, I haven't done that. But so I really can't speak to that. I'm sure it's possible, but I haven't done it. I've learned a lot about my past lives, that type of stuff. And I can't even really prove this is real. I proved it to myself. What I would do is I was thinking, my God, am I dreaming? Are these dreams? Because you really start to doubt your sanity when you're having these experiences. You're walking through walls, and I was able to visit places that were, distant from where I was physically, and then later go there physically and verify the details. So I'm like, well, that was exactly what I saw when I was out of body. It looks a little different. There's sometimes slight alterations, which I don't quite understand.
Well, that could be a perceptional thing, too.
Yeah, it could be. Sometimes there'll be complete projections. Like you'll see a chair there, and you go to the place, it's not there. But the other stuff is the same. That type of thing.
So you might have visited at a different point of time.
Entirely possible. It's weird, and it's really hard to say. But it's absolutely an amazing thing. Not only is it easy to do, it's not dangerous at all. There's no danger of becoming possessed or anything like that. I know that there's a lot of that sort of thing, warnings about this in the literature. But I've certainly had no ill effects. And I did a whole survey of all the literature. And I found 20 or 30 plus cases of healings, actually. And by healings, I mean people are cured of chronic diseases, like sarcoidosis, this terrible liver disease. This guy was cured of it, or fevers, colds, multiple sclerosis, I believe it was one guy. Claimed that having an astral travel experience cured him of that. This parallels what happens in a lot of near-death experiences as well, which does have this whole miraculous healing theme running through some of them. So apparently there is something about this astral travel that opens all these psychic channels within us. And the whole secret, I think, the explanation to it is our dreams. Because in our dreams, we have all these superpowers. We can do telekinesis. We can do telepathy in our dreams. We can fly. We can teleport. We can do all kinds of amazing stuff. And if you are able to kind of wake up within the dream state through astral travel, through lucid dreaming, some of these abilities begin to be translated into the waking state. And that was another thing that would happen with me, and certainly common in the books, is I'd go out of body, and then I'd have a precognitive dream, like on the way back. Really, really odd, and it would always occur that day, whatever it was. And it eventually did bleed a little bit into the waking state, where you could kind of turn it on at will. That was back in the day when I was much better at it, though. I'm working really hard now. I'm not getting enough sleep. And I'm sure I could, if I were to meditate, it's really all about the effort you put forth.
Right.
If you meditate an hour a day, you'll start seeing ghosts. You'll start being sensitive to, which places are haunted or not. You can go out of body and you can learn about all your past lives and start having clairaudience and clairsentience. Because again, this is an ability we all have. And I've never been able to levitate. But you know what? I would imagine that if I were to put the effort forth, people work 7 years to become a doctor, right? That's a lot of effort. If we were to put that kind of effort forth into something like this, we would have amazing success.
Wow. Now, I do want to take a second and thank everybody that's listening from around the world, because we do appreciate all of you that tunes in to our show. Tonight we have listeners from the U.S., Canada, Australia, the UK, and the famous other place, which there's about 5 of them listening from there. So I want to thank you all for being with us tonight. Do appreciate that. Getting back to, I still got some more questions about UFOs and things. Why are UFOs, many of them, shaped different?
Oh, isn't that infuriating? I don't understand it. The most of the cases I get are your average saucer shape, but I tell you, I have gotten every shape in the book. And I don't know who's designing these things and what kind of factories they're using. But honest to God, I can't explain that. I think the saucer shape is probably the most common. I get a lot of triangular shaped, globe shaped, and then there's these weird odd shaped ones. And I don't know what exactly we're dealing with here. It's a technology that's beyond our level. Here's an interesting side note. One guy I was talking to who was, actually on board one of these oddly shaped craft. He said it was almost prism shaped. He asked the ETs. Well, he noticed it kept changing size, and the ETs told him that they were actually able to. He asked them, "How big is this place?" And they said, "Oh, we're able to control how big it is. We can make it as big as we want." So there's a lot of cases where these UFOs are actually changing shape, and this is a technology that we don't have. I think that's some of what we're seeing. I don't know. It's the same thing I have with these ETs. How many cases are there? We've got thousands and thousands of cases of people who've seen ETs. How many have seen the same exact ET? Almost none. There are a few scattering of cases, but we can't identify people who've seen the same exact individual,
Type of
or
ET.
even groups of individuals to a large extent. There's just such an incredible variation going on that it's really hard to get a handle on. I mean, there are like 7 different types of ETs, main kinds, and 7 or so, different types of UFOs.
Well, now, do you think that the different types of UFOs would be the type of alien that would be in them?
Not so much. You'd think that, triangular ship would carry the, praying mantis type, and the saucers would carry the grays, and the globes would carry the Nordics, but it's not like that at all.
Really?
So,
huh?
I can't find any correlation.
Wow.
The people I've interviewed, it's evenly divided between men and women. In terms of the interviews I've done, I can't find any correlation with race. I can't find any correlation with just about education or religion or anything like that. It seems to be largely random. There's people who are having encounters in their childhood, and often it does seem that their ancestors, their parents, their grandparents have had encounters as well. Or they know somebody who's been having encounters their whole life, and they just got involved with him.
That was a question I was wondering as to whether the patterns that sometimes comes up, that someone will have lifelong abduction experiences, but then it turns out that their parents and or grandparents and beyond had experienced it, and that their children experienced it. Like a bloodline has been selected for, almost like, tagging a bear or a deer and keeping a track on its movements.
Yeah, it's regular enough. I'm going to say that occurs in a lot of cases. Not all of them. There are a lot of people who've never seen a UFO before or since, and have no one in their family has. Then again, there's one guy I interviewed. He was abducted off a Navy ship and saw, he said, like a 15-foot tall praying mantis type beings. His twin brother on the other side of the country was abducted by gray type aliens. I don't know what the chances of that are, but it does run in families, but not always.
Well, now, I know that they travel a lot at night, but they do travel some in the daytime. There's been daytime sightings. But at night, you would think that with it being dark, they could slide in and out and people wouldn't notice them. Why do they run around with their lights shining?
I've been asking myself this for years, and at first, do they need it to see? I don't know. We've got night vision technology, which we supposedly got from them. I think in a lot of cases, they're trying to attract attention, particularly in cases where people are seeing these colored lights.
Right.
Which are flashing, almost hypnotizing them. And this is something I've run across, is right before someone is abducted, these UFOs start really flashing. So I think in some cases that's what they're doing. They're hypnotizing people, or kind of just drawing their attention, or I don't know.
Getting them to focus in on it. Yeah.
It is weird, isn't it? Because there's no reason for them to be all lit up necessarily.
No, you figure they've got to have the technology and their own radar type stuff to where they could. There's got to be better than ours. They could go anywhere in the dark.
Well, here's a really weird example. This one guy interviewed, actually both man and his girlfriend were driving through Topanga Canyon, and they came upon this really odd-shaped UFO. His father is actually an aircraft designer, so he's around a lot of aircraft. And this was hovering about 20 feet above a ridge, not really moving. And it seems right as they drew right up next to it, it turned kind of on its side and flashed its belly at them, and it lit up like 50 lights. It lit up like a Christmas tree, they said. And it kind of flashed at them. And then it slowly moved away. So I don't know. That's weird, huh? I don't know what their lights. I'll tell you one thing. They do know the electromagnetic spectrum far better than we do. These lights that they have coming out of their craft, they not only heal people, they can levitate people, they can turn, machinery on and off. There are cases where people have been struck by beams of light and received communications, telepathic communications. So these beams of light can also burn. So there's a number of different things that they can do with the electromagnetic spectrum that we haven't mastered yet.
Now, as a MUFON inspector, when you get a call and you go out to a site where someone says they saw a UFO or one was supposed to land it or whatever the case may be, what are some of the things that you do as an investigator when you go out there?
Right. Well, this all depends on the case, and you kind of feel it out as you go on. I start with an initial phone interview usually, and often that's as far as it goes because it's just not worth the time if it's a daylight sighting at night of just a light or something like this. But if we're dealing with a landing, certainly those are the kinds of cases you want. I've only had a few really super extensive cases, which involves contacting the police and things like this, or going to the neighbors and asking them if they had seen anything, and getting people to have medical tests taken and things like this. It all depends on how extensive a person's case is. If they're experiencing abductions, was this a one-time sighting? With the Topanga Canyon case, that was one of my biggest investigations of all. I went all out on that. I contacted the police. They were referring me cases. I set up flyers at the local stores, and which were always disappearing. I got a lot of calls from those. And I was visiting landing sites and looking at supposed landing trace cases. I'm doing a lot of interviews, everything I could to try and figure out what was going on. And with the Coronado Island UFO incident, I of course interviewed all the witnesses. I listened to their hypnotic tapes, which were, I have to tell you, harrowing. And I looked at the medical evidence and had doctors examine them. And so you take whichever direction you can to try and corroborate this. And what's really amazing is when you can actually find other people who have seen the same thing that one group has seen in one location, and then you find someone else who saw the same thing on the same night. I was able to do that several times with the Topanga Canyon wave of sightings. So that was definitely my biggest case.
Now, our time seems to be just scooting right along here. So, Jeff, you or Craig, either one, got some questions you want to get in there real quick?
I just wanted to bring up something that I brought up to another guest a couple weeks ago. I want Preston's opinion on this. As ghost researchers, once you get that EVP, it seems like it's much easier to start getting other EVPs. Do you feel that once you see your first UFO sighting, that you start to see more and more and more? It's along the same lines. What's your opinion on that?
I think there's something to that, and I don't think I'm the only one who's noticed that, and because investigators have called it the repeater problem. Seeing one UFO absolutely greatly increases your chances of seeing another, and I think that's true with a lot of this paranormal phenomenon, whether it's opening up a door somehow. More likely, I think it's the witness that has, or the person who's seen this stuff has kind of reached a level where they're aware of it, or even, raised their vibration to a level. ETs seem to be very interested in people who are into the psychic stuff and who are developing their awareness and who have had paranormal experiences. And there seems to be a connection with this whole ghost and poltergeist thing as well. And even out-of-body experiences to the whole UFO phenomena. There are weird correlations and similarities and corroborations with all of them. And as far as ghosts, well, mediums know this. And I've talked to several people who have confirmed this, that if they know that you can see them, if they know that they've made an effect and gotten through, then they're much more likely to try again. And will follow you around even. And, I've had several people I've interviewed tell me who are not professional mediums at all, but just have problems with it, that they have to be careful around funerals and car accidents and hospitals and places where people have died, because spirits will follow them home. And for days and weeks afterwards, they'll have poltergeist-like problems. So once you open up that door, I think that once you start investigating this stuff, I don't know, there's something to that.
Well, Preston, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to tell people about your website and about your books and where they can buy your books at. And I want you to stay on after we get off. We'll talk with you for a few minutes. So why don't you go ahead and give all your information out right now?
All right, yeah, I do have a website up with my books. I'm putting up excerpts and stuff on. There's a blog there. The website is actually my name, Preston Dennet, all one word, with Weebly, Weedly. So it's Preston Dennet Weebly.com. And you can contact me through there if you have any experiences you'd like to share. My latest book, I've got a number of books coming out. Soon I just released UFOs over New York, and another one is Ghosts of Greater Los Angeles, both by Schiffer Books. And upcoming I have UFOs over New Mexico, which I'm really excited about. And UFOs over Nevada will be coming out after that. I'm doing a whole series on the United States.
Oh, that's good.
One state at a time.
Yeah.
And I'm also working right now on some very close encounters. I'm putting together another book about that, people who've had very, very extensive encounters. And I have to tell you, the whole abduction phenomenon, how people view ET contact, is not entirely accurate. So I think I'm going to change the way people feel about ET contact a lot with that book, or at least I'm hoping to, because it certainly changed my viewpoint of it. So I'm very much doing a lot of research into that thing right now. And I'm definitely interested in hearing from people who've had experiences, and I want to thank you, all three of you guys, for giving me a chance to speak. I really enjoyed it, and really am thankful for the opportunity.
Well, great.
Thank you, Preston.
Yeah, we've enjoyed
Yes,
it.
yeah.
So,
A lot of people are...
Go ahead.
I was also going to, we'll really need to have you back to talk about some of your ghost investigations.
Right. Oh, it's crazy. I was actually able to go into haunted houses and experience some of the stuff myself. So it wasn't just me interviewing people, but it's amazing when you can actually, experience your own paranormal activity. It's like, wow, this stuff is real.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've been down. Oh, there's the typing again. I've been down to the Queen Mary where I got my first EVP, and I've been to Linda Vista Hospital, and I've had a few unexpected ghostly encounters. I'll send you the link to that on Facebook when you've added me, and I've sent you an ad. So, hooray!
Awesome. Yeah, it's amazing the research that's going on these days. And the interest. All this stuff is finally becoming mainstream. I think the UFO cover-up is doomed. It's all going to become public. We're going to see the Roswell craft in a museum one of these days, hopefully within our lifetime. I just don't see it happening any other way. The UFOs are not going away. More and more people are becoming aware of ghosts. all this stuff is on primetime TV regularly now.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, the age of enlightenment is here. I think we're going to be looking at a very different world as all this stuff comes flooding forth. And like I said, if we could just end this cover-up, we would solve the energy crisis, the environmental crisis, and the economic crisis. So let's get it done.
But they would be losing. Those in power would feel like they're losing power to give that information away. So
they sure would.
Probably not immediately.
Yeah. People like to stay in power, but you know what? If they want to remain in control, they better start doing something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, our time's slipping right on by there. Why don't you go ahead and give out all our info real quick?
Exactly. Well, what I do is I write up a synopsis of each show on my website, 𝘍𝘬𝘮.net, GEFFGOULD.net/2011PNV.htm is the page. There you can either listen to the podcasts that we've done through the year or click on a link that'll take you to each report's specific page. Like the page for tonight's show will have a link to all of Preston's books that you can buy, also to his website, other references to which he's spoken and such. And, of course, look us up on the Paranormal View on Facebook, and we're at the paranormalview.com as well. I think also just paranormalview.com, or is it always just the paranormalview.com, Henry? Which is that?
Our site is theparanormalview.com.
Okay, and of course, if you want your own Paranormal View apparel, go to cafepress.com/realbadgershop, all one word. So that's about that. Thanks again, Preston.
My pleasure.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
And I do want to remind everybody about our Christmas Eve party. If you aren't doing anything and you're free, feel free to drop by and spend some time with us. It's going to be a fun show. We've got lots of things we're going to do. And don't forget to go to theparanormalview.com and send those letters into Santa. Tell us what you're wanting, or tell us what you feel is the magic of Christmas. So with that, next week we will be having Jeff Dwyer, who's an author of...
Well, you scared me there for a moment. I'm like, wait, I'm already here.
No, not that one. He's the author of Ghost Hunting Guide to the San Francisco Bay Area. So that ought to be really great. So until next week, this is Henry Foister.
Craig Rupp.
I'm Jeffrey Gould.
And we will see you next week at the same time. So we'll see you next week.
We're leaving. We're gone. Paranormal View. Come back and visit us again if you dare. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network.
The Paranormal View.